Questions, comments, current events, things that will make us smarter. Having heard it from us. Hey guys, just want to check in and drop a little lecture today on a chapter I forgot to have you read actually, and that is all about developing and less developed countries. So let's just kind of tackle it real quick. I believe it's chapter, call it 8. There's something in your O'Neill book. Chapter, you guys aren't going to read it anyway. Chapter 10, Developing Countries. And there's really just 3 main topics we want to talk about. Hafer brought props, colonization versus imperialism, economic choices that are made in the post-imperial setting, and then how do you create the state? The beautiful thing is you guys all should understand the developing countries pretty easily because you are developing countries, right? You've been colonized in some way, shape, or form, and now you have to make choices for yourself. Largely, they will fail. You will grow as a result of them, and then one day you'll become functional. That's how it goes. So key to remember here is that colonization is not the same as imperialism. Yes, I have my cheat sheet here. Okay? Colonization is when you actually physically occupy a territory. Okay, think the Spanish in Mexico, for example, right? Spain is physically there, controlling decisions, everything. Britain colonizing the world, right? The flip with that is imperialism. That's when you just control, usually economically, socially, culturally. Think more of like how the U.S. has done things, right? Very few times have we practiced colonization in our past. You could argue, after the Spanish-American War in the Philippines was U.S. colonization, but the 20th century has been one of U.S. imperialism, in that is where we're exerting our influence rather than physically occupying the country. So that's the main difference between colonization and imperialism. And then what we're focused on is how these developing countries emerge in the post-imperial or post-colonization setting. In Mexico's case, they were a direct colony, right? Britain was a colonizer. Russia really, they made their empire just in the area around them. Iran was never formally colonized, so imperialism would have been practiced there, right? Especially through the British oil companies and the U.S. oil companies. China, again, imperialization was really going on there. And then Mexico's our first direct colony. Nigeria also will be a colony of the British Empire. So in the post-colonial setting, you've got a couple things. Groups are not going to be economically equal. The colonizing power does not treat people fairly. If you have a brother or sister at home, you get that, right? You're not treated necessarily the same, and that leads to animosity. Some people believe others are set up to be more successful. So economically, groups are different. Ethnic and religious differences have probably been played up by the colonizing power, again, to divide the society so it's easier to control. That's just what you do. Some groups are favored, some groups are hurt. It's a classic Hotel Rwanda situation that you're all familiar with. There's no imagined community, really, in the new country, in the post-colonial setting, to come together. So that's one of the most important things that they have to do, is that you have to create the state. And that's pretty hard to do. There's gender issues and family issues as well that come into play that we don't need to worry about too much here. So economically, what choices can you make? Well, you can do one of 2 choices that are laid out in the book. Import substitution or export oriented. I'm so high tech. Okay. Import substitution is exactly like what it sounds. You are not going to import goods. You're going to substitute your own goods. Come here. You're going to substitute your own goods as a result. Who's a good boy? Wait, come here. Who's a good boy? He's my guest teacher. You're going to substitute your own goods. So rather than import cars, right, you're going to make your own cars. Now, import substitution is like steroids into the economy. Instantly jobs. Instantly your economy is going to take off. But the problem is your goods probably are a little inferior. And also, if you're shutting off the world through high tariffs, you are going to not be competitive globally when import substitution goes away. So import substitution is a quick fix. Think steroids to the economy. It has high tariffs. Everybody knows High tariffs don't do well for an economy long term. Right? Sadly, Mexico actually practiced import substitution in the early developmental stages. So their economy did very well. You're going to read something called the Mexican Miracle. The Mexican Miracle was an oil boom, a booming global economy, and they did really well for themselves with those two things. And then when the oil prices tanked in the 70s, the Mexican Miracle became the Mexican Nightmare, and that's going to lead to NAFTA. So import substitution, again, you're just substituting all imports to focus on your own country. Think like if we were ever to say, like America first or something like that. Who knows? Export oriented is where you find a good in the market that is needed and you just really start producing that. A lot of Asian countries actually went along this way. South Korea is a really good example, especially with technological inventions and exports. So Latin American countries kind of follow the import substitution, trying to build up their local economy artificially. And then when you open up to the world, export oriented, you just kind of follow that product life cycle. And it's going to be more sustainable long term. So those are two big things there. And then you're going to run into something else called structural adjustment programs. This is basically what the world says you have to do to play with them. So if you're a developing country, you've probably been taken over by a dictatorship, you probably have statism, state control, high tariffs. Structural adjustment programs get rid of all those, right? It's basically a new form of colonization where they say you can't have so much state control. You've got to get rid of subsidies to play with the World Trade Organization, or the Great Eight. They'll kind of set that. This is seen as a way for the developed world to set the rules in which the developing world has to play by. Rigging the game, classic. So that's pretty much chapter 10 in a nutshell. We can really kind of fast track that there a little bit. So you've got colonization versus imperialism. You've got the economic decisions to make, whether you import substitution or export oriented, knowing that eventually, due to globalization, neocolonialism, right? That's the structural adjustment. Neocolonialism. This is just how the U.S. forces you to play in a certain way. And then you've got, how are you going to create the state? Because the key to an effective state is to be engaged and have prosperity. So you need an imagined community buying into everything, and you have to have economic success. Ugh, things are not boding well for us right now. That's long enough for this, for chapter 10. I'm going to try and fix the Google group if you have questions. And tomorrow I'll kind of hit out, we'll start taking chunks out of Mexico here. But that's all for now. I hope you guys are all being safe. Later.